The space station Nexus Prime floated in the dark between three star systems. It was the kind of place where criminals met to make deals, and killers came to find work. In the lowest level of the station, behind doors that had no signs, the Galactic Assassin's Guild did business. Zektar pushed through the heavy metal door with enough force to make it slam against the wall. The reptilian creature stood 7 feet tall with green scales that gleamed under the dim lights. His yellow eyes burned with anger as he walked across the room. Other aliens in the waiting area looked up, then quickly looked away. Everyone knew, better than to stare at an angry Vorthak. Behind the reception desk sat a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. She did not look up from her computer screen when Zektar approached. "Guildmaster Kryn is expecting you," she said in a bored voice. "Third door on the left." Zektar stomped down the hallway, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. He found Kryn's office and walked in without knocking. The Guildmaster was an old alien with gray skin and black eyes that had seen too much death. Scars covered his arms and neck. He had been killing for money longer than most species had been traveling in space. "You have something for us," Kryn said. It was not a question. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Zektar threw a data pad down hard enough to make the desk shake. 3 human colonies in the outer rim. I want them all dead. Every man, woman, and child. Kryn picked up the data pad and began reading. His expression did not change as he scrolled through the information. Population numbers, defense systems, trade routes, daily schedules, everything an assassin would need to plan an attack. "This is very detailed work," he said finally. "My people are not stupid," Zektar replied. "We know how to gather intelligence. The humans are expanding into our territory. They think they can take what belongs to the Vorthak Empire." "The bounty?" 500 million credits per colony. Half now, half when the job is finished. Kryn set down the data pad and leaned back. In his chair, that much money could buy star destroyers. It could fund wars. It was enough to make even the most careful assassin take risks. "I will need time to find the right people for this work." "How long?" "Give me 3 days. Check back then." Zektar stood up, his tail swishing behind him. 3 days, no longer. My patience has limits." After the Vorthak left, Kryn stared at the data pad for a long time. Then he picked up his communicator and sent out a message to every assassin in the guild database. The response came back faster than he expected. One by one, the replies appeared on his screen. The same word over and over again. No, no, no. Not one assassin was willing to take the contract. Kryn had never seen anything like it. In 30 years of running the guild, he had never posted a contract that every single assassin refused. He sent out personal messages to his best killers, the ones who had never turned down work before. The answers came back even faster. Still, 3 days later, Zektar returned. Kryn was waiting for him with bad news. "No one will take the job," Kryn said without greeting. "What do you mean no one will take the job?" Zektar's voice rose to a hiss. "You run the largest assassin organization in the galaxy. That is correct. And not one of my people will accept a contract on human targets. Increase the bounty. 1 billion credits per colony." Kryn shook his head. "Money is not the problem." "Then what is the problem?" Kryn opened a file on his computer and turned the screen so Zektar could see it. 3 years ago, we sent a team to eliminate a human diplomat on New Texas. 6 of our best assassins. They had killed presidents, generals, crime bosses. Between them, they had over 200 successful eliminations. What happened to them? They are all dead. Killed by one middle-aged human who worked in an office and pushed papers all day. Zektar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You expect me to believe that one soft human killed 6 professional assassins?" His name was Jake Morrison. He was 43 years old and worked as a trade negotiator. No military training in his file, no combat experience, no weapons permits. Kryn pulled up another file. The local sheriff found all 6 assassins dead in Morrison's kitchen, each one killed with items from around the house. A coffee mug, a kitchen knife, an electrical cord. Impossible. The security footage shows Morrison drinking coffee and reading the morning news when the first assassin came through his window. By the time the sun was fully up, all 6 were dead. Morrison finished his coffee, called the local police, and went to work on time. Zektar stared at the screen. The photos showed 6 alien bodies arranged around a small kitchen table. Each, death looked quick and efficient. This Morrison, he must have been military, special forces. Your intelligence was wrong. We thought the same thing. So we investigated. Jake Morrison was born on Earth, went to school for business, and had never fired a weapon in his life. The most dangerous thing he had ever done was play recreational sports in college. Then how? Kryn closed the file and looked directly at Zektar. That is what every assassin in the guild wants to know. So they started asking questions, talking to other killers, checking their own records. He paused. Do you know how many successful assassinations have been carried out against human targets in the last 10 years? How many? 0. Not 1. We have records of 47 attempts across the galaxy. Every single assassin is dead. Every single human target survived. Zektar felt something cold move through his chest. That cannot be true. I have the files if you want to see them. A human traitor named Roy Stevens has survived 7 separate assassination attempts. A farmer called Pete Johnson killed 3 stalkers who were hunting him. A bartender named Danny Murphy identified and eliminated a poison specialist by watching the way the assassin blinked. You are trying to scare me into paying more money. Kryn stood up and walked to his window. Outside, ships moved between the docking bays like insects around lights. Yesterday I received a personal visit from Velquin. Do you know that name? Zektar nodded. Everyone in the criminal underworld knew Velquin. The alien had been killing for money for 20 years, and had never failed to complete a contract. Velquin came here to tell me something. He said that 2 months ago, someone offered him 50 million credits to eliminate a human scientist. On a research station, 50 million credits for one target. Do you know what he told them? What? I don't hunt humans. Neither should you. Kryn turned back to face Zektar. When Velquin refuses a 50 million credit contract, other assassins... Listen, word spreads. Now every killer in the galaxy knows the same thing, which is, hunting humans is suicide. Zektar's claws scraped against the arms of his chair. This is ridiculous. Humans are weak. They have small colonies and light defenses. They prefer talking to fighting. Yes, they do prefer talking. But when talking stops working, something else happens. Something that has killed every professional assassin who has tried to test it. I will find someone else. There are killers outside your guild. You are welcome to try. Kryn sat back down at his desk. But I should warn you about something else we have learned. What? Humans share information. When one human is attacked, other humans learn about it very quickly. They adapt, they prepare. Each attempt makes the next one harder. Zektar stood up quickly, his chair falling backward. The Vorthak Empire will not be stopped by human tricks. The Vorthak Empire is welcome to test those tricks for themselves, Kryn said calmly. But the Galactic Assassins Guild will not be part of it. Find another way to handle your human problem. As Zektar stormed out of the office, Kryn made a note in Morrison's file. The human was still alive, still working as a trade negotiator, still drinking his morning coffee, just like every other human who had been marked for death and lived to see another day. In the criminal underworld of Nexus Prime, word was already spreading. The job was too big and the money was too good, but no one would take it. Even the most desperate killers were shaking their heads and walking away. Hunting humans meant certain death. Everyone knew it now. Everyone except the Vorthak Empire. Sheriff Ben Rodriguez was drinking his second cup of coffee when the call came in. It was 6:30 in the morning on New Texas, and the sun was just starting to paint the desert orange. His office was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of hover trucks moving cargo at the spaceport. Sheriff's office, he answered, expecting another complaint about noise from the mining operation, or maybe someone's livestock getting loose. Morning, Ben. This is Jake Morrison over on Settlers Row. I need to report a break-in at my house. Rodriguez knew Morrison. He was a quiet man who worked for the Trade Commission, the kind of neighbor who kept his lawn neat and always waved when he drove past. "Anyone hurt, Jake? You need medical?" "No injuries on my end, but you might want to bring the coroner. And maybe call Dr. Chang at the xenobiology lab. She's going to want to see this." Rodriguez set down his coffee cup. Morrison's voice was too calm for someone reporting a break-in. "Jake, what exactly happened over there?" "6 aliens broke into my house around dawn. They seemed intent on causing me harm, so I defended myself. They're all dead now. Coffee's still hot if you want some when you get here." Rodriguez was already reaching for his hat and keys. In 15 years of law enforcement, he had never heard anyone report multiple homicides in the same tone they might use to discuss the weather. "I'm on my way, don't touch anything." "Too late for that, I'm afraid, but I'll try not to disturb the scene any more than necessary." Rodriguez made the drive to Settlers Row in record time, his patrol car kicking up dust clouds as he raced through the residential area. Morrison's house looked normal from the outside. White walls, red tile roof, small garden in front. The only sign of trouble was a broken window on the side of the house. Morrison met him at the front door, still wearing his pajamas and holding a coffee mug. He looked exactly like he always did. Average height, gray hair, reading glasses hanging from a chain around his neck. The only difference was a small cut on his left hand. "Morning, Ben. Thanks for coming out so early." "Jake, where are the bodies?" "Kitchen. I figured it was better to contain the situation to one room if possible." Rodriguez followed Morrison through the living room, noting that everything looked perfectly normal. Family photos on the walls, newspapers folded on the coffee table. No signs of struggle. Then they reached the kitchen and Rodriguez stopped walking. 6 alien bodies were arranged around Morrison's breakfast table. Rodriguez recognized the species from his law enforcement training. 2 were Kithara, insect-like creatures with 4 arms and natural body armor. 1 was a Naloth, tall and thin with gray skin and oversized eyes. 2 more were Zephyrians, reptilian aliens with scales and claws. The last one was something Rodriguez had never seen before, with blue skin and tentacles instead of arms. Each alien was clearly dead, and each had been killed with something from Morrison's kitchen. 1 Kithara had a coffee mug embedded in its skull. The Naloth's neck was broken, apparently by a kitchen towel that was still wrapped around its throat. 1 of the Zephyrians had been stabbed through the eye with a butter knife. Jesus, Jake. What the hell happened here? Morrison refilled his coffee cup and offered one to Rodriguez, who shook his head. "I was reading the morning news on my tablet when I heard something at the window. Looked up and saw that fellow there." He pointed to the blue-skinned alien, trying to cut through the glass quietly. "Figured he wasn't here to sell insurance." "So you killed him?" "Well, not right away. I pretended not to notice and kept reading. Wanted to see how many there were and what they were planning. The blue one got the window open and signaled to his friends. All 6 came through pretty much at once." Rodriguez looked around the kitchen again. There were no bullet holes, no blast marks from energy weapons, no signs of advanced combat. "Jake, these look like professional killers. Military-grade equipment, combat armor, the works. How did you take them down with kitchen supplies?" Morrison sat down at his usual spot at the table, apparently unbothered by the alien corpse 3 feet away. "Well, the first one through was that big Kithara there. He was carrying some kind of energy rifle, very impressive looking. Problem was he had to duck to get through the window, which put his head at exactly the right height." "Right height for what?" "For me to hit him with my coffee mug. Ceramic breaks Kithra skull plates pretty easily, turns out. Once he went down, his rifle skittered across the floor toward the stove." Rodriguez was taking notes, but he was having trouble believing what he was writing. "What about the others?" "The Naloth was next. He was quick, I'll give him that. Had some kind of poison, dart gun. But he made the mistake of assuming I was an easy target. Came at me in a straight line instead of using cover. I grabbed the kitchen towel and got behind him before he could turn around." "You strangled him with a dish towel? Broke his neck?" "Actually, Naloth vertebrae are pretty fragile if you know where to apply pressure. Read about it in a xenobiology journal last year." Rodriguez stared at Morrison. You read xenobiology journals? I read everything, Ben. You never know when information might be useful. Anyway, the two Zephyrians came at me together after that. Smart tactics, really. One high, one low. But they didn't account for the kitchen layout. Morrison stood up and walked Rodriguez through the fight, pointing out details like he was giving a tour of his garden. The first Zephyrian had slipped on spilled coffee and fallen into the refrigerator. Morrison had used the moment of confusion to grab a butter knife and make a quick, precise strike to the alien's eye. Right through the orbital socket into the brain, Morrison explained. Zephyrian anatomy puts their main nerve cluster right behind the left eye. Very convenient from a defensive standpoint. The second Zephyrian had tried to use a plasma cutter to slice Morrison in half, but Morrison had unplugged the toaster and thrown it at the alien's head. The heavy appliance had connected with enough force to crack the Zephyrian's skull. What about those two? Rodriguez pointed to the remaining bodies. The other Cathara had some kind of paralysis weapon. Nasty piece of work. But he made the same mistake they all made. Which was? He assumed I would panic. Humans have a reputation for being emotional and unpredictable, but panic and unpredictability are two different things. Morrison picked up an electrical cord from the counter. He got close enough to use his weapon, but I was ready for him. Electrical cord makes an excellent garrote if you know how to use it. Rodriguez felt like he was listening to someone describe a chess game instead of a life-or-death fight. And the last one? The blue fellow with the tentacles. He was the smart one, stayed back and tried to coordinate the others. Might have worked, if he hadn't tried to call for backup on his communication device. Morrison walked over to the microwave and opened the door. Inside was a melted piece of alien technology. Microwave ovens put out a lot of electromagnetic interference, fried his communicator and gave him a splitting headache at the same time. After that, it was just a matter of getting close enough to break his neck. Rodriguez closed his notebook and looked around the kitchen one more time. Jake, this doesn't make sense. These aliens had advanced weapons and armor. They were professionals. How did you see them coming? Morrison poured himself another cup of coffee. Ben, I've been negotiating trade deals with aliens for 12 years. You learn to read body language to notice when someone is lying or planning something. These 6 were trying too hard to be invisible. What do you mean? Normal criminals would have waited until I left for work. These guys wanted to catch me at home, which meant they wanted it to look like an accident or a robbery gone wrong. But they made too many small mistakes. The way they positioned themselves around the house, the equipment they brought, even the time they chose to attack. It all pointed to assassination, not burglary. Rodriguez shook his head. So you were ready for them? I'm always ready, Ben. Any human who deals with aliens has to be. We're outnumbered out here by about 1,000,000 to 1. The only advantage we have is that most aliens underestimate us. Why would they do that? Morrison smiled for the first time that morning. Because we prefer to talk instead of fight. Most species see that as weakness. They don't understand that choosing not to fight and being unable to fight are completely different things. An hour later, Dr. Lisa Chang arrived with her xenobiology team. She was a small woman, with short black hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Rodriguez had worked with her before on cases involving alien technology or biology. She spent 20 minutes examining the bodies, taking notes and photos. Finally, she pulled Rodriguez aside. Ben, I need to ask you something, and I want you to give me an honest answer. Okay. How long have you known that Jake Morrison was dangerous? Rodriguez frowned. I never thought of him as dangerous. He's just a regular guy who works for the Trade Commission. A regular guy who just killed 6 professional assassins with household items. Chang looked back toward the kitchen. Ben, I've been studying human-alien interactions for 8 years. This isn't the first incident like this. What do you mean? I have files on 47 similar cases across human space. Every time aliens try to eliminate a human target, the aliens end up dead. Every single time. Rodriguez felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's impossible. Dr. Kethamar stood in the command center of the Vorthak battlecruiser Vengeance, staring at the holographic display that showed human settlements scattered across 3 star systems. As the military's chief analyst, he had been given an impossible, tasked by the High Command. They wanted to know why every attempt to eliminate human targets had failed. The reptilian officer had spent his entire career studying alien military tactics. He understood how the Centaurians fought with their energy shields and precision weapons. He knew the weakness in Naloth battle formations and how to counter Kythera swarm attacks. But humans were different. Humans made no sense. "Report," came, the voice of General Vexthal behind him. Kethmar turned to face his superior. The general was old for a Vorthak, his scales dulled with age but his yellow eyes still sharp. Scars across his neck showed where enemy claws had nearly killed him, in battles decades ago. "I have completed my analysis of the human defensive capabilities," Kethmar said, gesturing to the holographic files floating around them. "The results are disturbing." "Explain." Kethmar activated a recording device and the image of a human settlement appeared in the air between them. "This is Green Valley, an agricultural colony with a population of 3,000 humans. 2 months ago, we sent 3 of our best hunters to eliminate their administrator, a farmer named Pete Johnson." The hologram shifted to show intelligence, photos of Johnson. He was a middle-aged human with sun-darkened skin and calloused hands. Nothing about him suggested military training or combat experience. "What happened to our hunters?" "All 3 are dead. Johnson killed them using farming equipment and homemade traps." Kethmar pulled up the mission recordings. The first hunter, Zeknos, attempted to approach Johnson's farm at night. He was found the next morning at the bottom of an irrigation ditch, drowned in 3 feet of water. An accident? That is what we thought initially. But examination of the scene showed that the ditch had been deliberately flooded. Johnson had redirected water from the main irrigation system to create a trap. Zeknos fell into it while trying to approach the farmhouse. General Vexthal moved closer to the hologram. "Continue." The second hunter, Velkara, decided to wait and observe Johnson's daily routine. She spent 4 days watching from a hidden position near the farm. On the 5th day, Johnson's livestock began acting strangely. The cattle gathered at the far end of their pasture. The chickens would not leave their coop. The farm dogs would not stop barking. Johnson noticed this. Immediately, he spent 1 hour studying his animal's behavior, then began hunting the hunter. Velkara was found dead in her hiding place, killed by a projectile weapon Johnson had made from farming supplies. Kethmar changed the display to show photos of the improvised crossbow. It was crude but effective, built from wood and metal parts that Johnson had found around his farm. The third hunter? Thalrex tried a direct approach. He waited for Johnson to leave his farm and travel to the nearby town for supplies, but Johnson never arrived at his destination. Ambush? Johnson had somehow detected that he was being followed. He led Thalrex into a section of wilderness that Johnson knew better than anyone. Thalrex was found 3 days later, dead from exposure and dehydration. Johnson had used his knowledge of the local environment to trap our hunter in an area with no water source. General Vexthal was quiet for a long time. 3 professional hunters defeated by 1 farmer. "It gets worse," Kethmar said. He changed the display to show a space station orbiting a gas giant. "This is Crosswind Station, a trading post with a mixed population of humans and aliens. We sent our poison specialist, Nexvoth, to eliminate a human bartender named Danny Murphy. A bartender should be an easy target. That is what we thought. Murphy works in the station's main bar, which serves both humans and aliens. Nexvoth posed as a customer in order to drink, planning to slip poison into Murphy's food when he was not looking. The hologram showed security footage from the bar. Murphy was a tall human with red hair and an easy smile. He moved behind the bar with practiced efficiency, serving drinks to a mixed crowd of alien traders and human workers. What went wrong? Murphy identified Nexavoth as a threat within minutes of his arrival. The human watched our agent's facial expressions, body, language, and ordering patterns. When Nexavoth tried to poison Murphy's drink, Murphy had already switched their glasses. Kethmar played the security recording. It showed Murphy serving drinks with a friendly smile, chatting with customers, apparently unaware of any danger. But when he served Nexavoth's drink, there was something different about his movements. More careful, more precise. Nexavoth died from his own poison? Yes. And Murphy spent the evening comforting him, pretending not to know what was happening. To every other customer in the bar, it looked like Murphy was trying to help a sick alien. Only we know that Murphy was watching our agent die. General Vexthul studied the recording. How did the human know? According to the station's security chief, Murphy said he noticed that Nexavoth's eye movements were wrong. Apparently, when most aliens lie or plan deception, their eyes move in predictable patterns. Murphy had learned to read these patterns from years of working with mixed alien crowds. A bartender studying alien psychology? That is what disturbs me most about humans, Kethmar said. They learn constantly. Every interaction teaches them something new about other species. Information that seems harmless becomes dangerous when they need to defend themselves. Kethmar changed the display again. This time it showed a human colony ship moving through deep space. This is the merchant vessel Liberty Bell, commanded by Captain Roy Stevens. Over the past 2 years, Stevens has survived 7 separate assassination attempts. 7? How is that possible? Stevens treats every port as a potential threat. He studies local criminal organizations before arriving. He varies his schedule and route randomly. He sleeps in different locations on his ship each night. Most importantly, he shares information with other human traders. The hologram showed a network of communication links between human ships and colonies. Messages flowed constantly between them, carrying warnings, updates, and tactical information. The humans have created an information network? Not officially. They simply talk to each other. When one human is attacked, others learn about it within hours. They adapt their defenses based on new information. Each failed assassination attempt makes every other human more difficult to kill. General Vexthul walked around the holographic display, studying the network of human settlements and trade routes. What is your recommendation? Do not engage humans in individual combat. Do not attempt targeted eliminations. If conflict is unavoidable, use overwhelming force from maximum distance. You are suggesting we fear them? I am suggesting we respect them, Kethmar replied. Every species in the galaxy has evolved for specific environments and situations. Kythera are perfect for swarm combat. Naloth excel at long-range warfare. Centaurians are masters of defensive battles. And humans? Humans are generalists. They adapt to any situation. When you corner most species, they follow predictable responses. Flight or fight, freeze or flee. When you corner a human, they become creative. That creativity is what kills our assassins. Kethmar pulled up another file, this one showing psychological profiles of human behavior under stress. Other species become more predictable when threatened. Humans become less predictable. They use tools in ways no one expects. They think of solutions that should not work, but somehow do. Give me an example. Helen Brooks, colony administrator, on Haven Prime. When assassin Vexthul tried to eliminate her, every human in the settlement was warned within 2 hours. They did not panic or call for military help. They simply made it impossible for Vexthul to approach his target. How? They created what they call a neighborhood watch. Every human in the settlement took turns observing the area around Brooks' home. They used their own communication devices to stay in contact. They shared shifts so someone was always watching. Kethmar showed the surveillance footage from the settlement. It looked completely normal. Humans going about their daily business, working in gardens, walking to shops, visiting neighbors. But there was something different about their movements, more coordinated, more aware. Vexthul found himself being observed by dozens of humans everywhere he went. He could not approach Brooks without being seen. He could not hide because the humans had mapped every possible hiding place. He could not wait because the humans never stopped watching. What happened to him? He attempted to retreat and was found dead 2 days later. The humans had herded him toward a section of wilderness, where he became lost. No one attacked him directly. They simply made it impossible for him to succeed or escape. General Vexthul was quiet for several minutes, studying the data. Finally, he spoke. How many other species know about human defensive capabilities? Word is spreading throughout the criminal underworld. The Assassins Guild has declared humans off limits. Several mercenary companies have refused contracts in human space. Even some military units are reconsidering planned operations. Because they are afraid? Because they are learning what we should have learned first. Humans are not prey animals. They are apex predators disguised as diplomats and farmers and bartenders. Sektar stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the small research station floating in the darkness ahead. Deep Space 7 looked like easy prey. 12 humans working alone, 3 days from the nearest colony, with only basic defensive systems. After weeks of listening to ridiculous stories about human defensive abilities, he would prove that his people were superior. "Scan complete," reported his weapons officer. "Station has minimal shields, no heavy weapons, standard communication. Array. Population confirmed at 12 humans." Sektar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "What are their occupations?" "Scientists, sir. Astrophysicists, engineers, biologists. No military personnel on record." "Perfect. We will board the station, eliminate all witnesses, and send a message to humanity. The Vorthak Empire does not fear human tricks." His boarding party consisted of 20 elite warriors, each armed with military-grade weapons and armor. They had fought in a dozen campaigns and conquered worlds for the Empire. 12 human scientists should be no challenge at all. Dr. Kevin Wright was alone in the station's main laboratory when the proximity alarms began sounding. He looked up from his stellar observation data and checked the scanner readings. 1 Vorthak warship, approaching fast with weapons powered. Wright was 52 years old with gray hair and thick glasses. He looked like exactly what he was, a scientist who had spent most of his adult life studying distant stars. But 20 years ago, before he discovered his love of astrophysics, he had been Sergeant Wright of the Colonial Marines. He pressed the station-wide communication button. "All hands, this is Kevin. We have a Vorthak warship approaching with hostile intent. Execute Protocol 7 immediately." Around the station, 11 other humans stopped what they were doing and moved with practiced efficiency. Protocol 7 was something they had hoped never to use, but they had prepared for it anyway, because humans always prepared for the worst. Chief Engineer Maria Santos was in the power core room when the alarm sounded. She was a small woman with oil-stained coveralls and capable hands that could repair anything on the station. She had also spent 4 years as a Navy combat engineer, before falling in love with faster-than-light technology. Santos began rerouting power from non-essential systems to defensive measures that officially did not exist. The research station's blueprints showed only scientific equipment, but Santos and her team had made some modifications over the past year, just in case. Communications specialist Tony Kim was at his post when the attack began. He was 28 years old and looked young enough to be a college student. His job was to monitor deep space radio signals and maintain contact with other human settlements. But Kim had learned his electronic skills in military intelligence before deciding he preferred listening to stars instead of enemy transmissions. Kim's fingers flew over his control panel as he sent out a priority message. "On all human frequencies. Deep Space 7 under attack. Vorthak boarding party. We are engaging. Repeat, Vorthak forces attacking research station." The message went out just as the enemy warship fired disruptor beams at the station's communication array. But Kim had expected that. The message had already reached 3 relay stations and would be forwarded to every human settlement within 50 light-years. Dr. Frank Miller was in the hydroponics lab when the station shook from weapons fire. He was a botanist who studied how plants grew in artificial environments, hoping to improve food production on colony worlds. He was also the station's expert on alien biochemistry, a skill he had learned during 2 tours as an army medic. Miller began mixing compounds from his plant specimens, creating chemical combinations that would be harmless to humans but very unpleasant for Vorthak physiology. He had studied their species extensively and knew exactly which gases would cause temporary blindness and respiratory distress. The Vorthak boarding party cut through the station's hull with military precision. 20 warriors in full battle armor, carrying weapons that could punch through tank plating. They expected to find frightened scientists hiding in closets or laboratory storage rooms. Instead, they found a trap. The first indication that something was wrong came when the lights went out. Emergency lighting should have activated immediately, but the corridors remained dark. The Vorthak warriors switched to infrared vision and continued forward. That was when the electrical systems began discharging. Santos had rerouted power from the station's fusion reactor through the metal walls and floor panels. The Vorthak warriors found themselves walking through corridors that carried enough electrical current to power a small city. Their armor conducted the electricity perfectly, delivering stunning shocks that left several warriors unconscious. The survivors pressed forward, but now they had to deal with the atmosphere. Miller's chemical mixture had been released through the ventilation system. It smelled like flowers to human noses, but it caused Vorthak eyes to water and their breathing to become labored. Half blind and struggling to breathe, the boarding party stumbled into the station's main corridor. That was where they met Wright. Thomeo, former Marine, had positioned himself at a junction between three corridors, using furniture and equipment to create defensive positions. He carried no energy weapons or military firearms. Instead, he held a modified plasma cutter that the engineering team used for repairs. "You picked the wrong research station," Wright said calmly, then triggered the plasma cutter. The tool was designed to cut through metal bulkheads. It worked just as well on Vorthak armor. The first warrior went down with a hole burned through his chest plate. The others tried to return fire, but their weapons kept malfunctioning. Santos had been busy with the station's electromagnetic systems. Every time a Vorthak warrior tried to fire an energy weapon, a precisely timed electromagnetic pulse disrupted the weapon's firing mechanism. Projectile weapons worked fine, but most of the boarding party carried energy rifles. The battle moved through the station's corridors like a deadly game of hide and seek. The humans used their knowledge of every pipe, conduit, and maintenance tunnel to appear and disappear without warning. They turned scientific equipment into weapons and used the station's own systems against the invaders. Dr. Amy Foster was the station's psychologist, responsible for maintaining crew mental health during long isolation periods. She was also a former military interrogator who understood how different species reacted under stress. Foster used the station's communication system to broadcast sounds that were psychologically disturbing to Vorthak hearing, creating additional confusion among the boarding party. Botanist Miller had released a second chemical compound, this one designed to interfere with Vorthak pheromone communication. The warriors could no longer coordinate effectively because they could not smell each other's chemical signals. Meanwhile, Kim was using the station's sensor array as a weapon. By focusing the deep space radio telescope and overloading its transmitter, he created directed electromagnetic pulses that fried the electronics in Vorthak equipment. The boarding party's numbers dropped steadily. Some fell to Wright's improvised weapons. Others were electrocuted by Santos's power grid modifications. Several more succumbed to Miller's chemical attacks or became lost in the station's maze-like interior after Foster's psychological warfare disrupted their coordination. By the time Zektar realized his boarding party was in serious trouble, only 6 warriors remained conscious and combat effective. The research station that should have been an easy target had become a fortress defended by humans who fought like they had been preparing for this battle their entire lives. "Retreat to the ship," Zektar ordered over the communication channel. "We will destroy the station from orbit." But the surviving warriors could not retreat. The humans had sealed the boarding hatches and filled the docking corridors with Miller's chemical compounds. The Vorthak forces were trapped inside a station that had become a weapon designed specifically to kill them. Wright's voice came over the station's communication system, broadcast to both the remaining boarding party and Zektar's ship. "This is Dr. Kevin Wright, station commander. Your boarding party has been neutralized. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your ship beyond weapons range, or we will consider you a continuing threat." "You have no weapons that can harm my ship," Zektar replied. "Are you sure about that?" Santos had been working on one final modification. The station's main deflector array, normally used to clear space debris from their path, had been reconfigured and overloaded. It would only work once before burning out completely, but it would deliver enough concentrated energy to cripple a warship's shields. The beam lanced out from Deep Space 7 and struck Zektar's ship directly amidships. Shields flared and failed. Hull plating cracked. Power systems overloaded throughout the vessel. "Next shot goes through your reactor core," Wright announced calmly. "Your choice." Zektar stared at his damage reports in disbelief. A research station crewed by 12 scientists had just crippled his warship and eliminated most of his elite boarding party. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was exactly what every other alien commander had warned him would happen if he attacked humans. "Withdraw," he ordered his helmsman. "Best possible speed." As the Vorthak ship limped away into hyperspace, Wright began checking on his crew. 6 months after the Deep Space 7 incident, the news had spread to every corner of the galaxy. On the criminal space station, Black Harbor, crime boss Zareth called an emergency meeting of the Syndicate Council. The massive alien looked around, the table at representatives from a dozen criminal organizations, each one more dangerous than most planetary governments. "We have a problem," Zareth announced, his forearms gesturing at the holographic display floating above the table. "The human problem." Vexiluna, a serpentine crime lord from the Outer Rim, hissed softly. "You mean the reputation problem. Every enforcer, assassin, and hired gun in my organization is refusing human contracts." "Same here," growled Kethmos, whose tentacled species controlled most of the drug trade in 3 sectors. "I offered double rates last week. Triple rates. No one would take the job." Zareth activated the display, showing incident reports from across the galaxy. "In the past year, we have lost over 200 operatives attempting to eliminate human targets. Not one human has been successfully killed. Not one." The crime bosses studied the data in uncomfortable silence. These were beings who had built empires on fear and violence, but the numbers were clear. Humans had become untouchable. "What do you propose?" asked Nixtar, a shadowy figure whose species preferred to remain unseen. "We declare humans off limits," Zareth said. "Official syndicate policy. No contracts, no operations, no hostile actions against human targets." The vote was unanimous. On the other side of the galaxy, Ambassador Thelvas of the Centaurian Republic was experiencing a very different kind of meeting. He sat across from human diplomat Sarah Martinez in a conference room aboard the Neutral. Station Harmony Point, watching her review trade agreements with the same calm attention she might give to a grocery list. Thelvas had been a diplomat for 30 years. He understood the subtle art of negotiation, the careful balance of threat and promise that made interstellar politics work. But something had changed in the past year. Human diplomats no longer seemed impressed by implied threats or shows of military strength. "The Centaurian Republic finds these trade terms somewhat limiting," he said carefully, testing the waters. Martinez looked up from her datapad with a polite smile. "I'm sorry to hear that, Ambassador. Would you like to suggest alternative terms?" There was nothing threatening in her voice or manner. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and the kind of patient expression that suggested she dealt with difficult people regularly. But Thelvas had read the intelligence reports. He knew what had happened at Deep Space 7 and a dozen other locations. "Perhaps we could discuss military cooperation as well," he suggested. "The United Human Colonies are always interested in peaceful cooperation," Martinez replied. "Though I should mention that our recent experiences have shown us to be quite capable of handling our own security needs." The words were diplomatic, but the message was clear. Humans no longer needed protection from anyone. More importantly, they no longer feared anyone either. Thelvas found himself negotiating from a position he had never experienced before. The humans were not weak supplicants seeking favor. They were equals who could afford to walk away from any deal that did not serve their interests. For the first time in his career, he was negotiating with a species that other species feared to attack. On the military academy world of Calthax Prime, General Pexthran stood before a class of young officers, pointing to a tactical display that showed human colony patterns across the frontier. "Who can tell me the primary weakness in human defensive strategy?" he asked. A dozen hands shot up. The general pointed to an eager young lieutenant. "Their colonies are scattered and isolated, sir. They lack centralized command structure." "Incorrect," Pexithron replied. That is their strength, not their weakness. When you attack one human colony, you are not fighting one colony. You are fighting every human who receives word of the attack. He changed the display to show communication networks linking human settlements. Humans share information faster than any species we have studied. They learn from each other's experiences and adapt their defenses accordingly. Another student raised her hand. But surely their lack of military specialization makes them vulnerable. Also, incorrect. Military specialization creates predictable responses. Humans are generalists. When threatened, they become whatever they need to become. Soldiers, engineers, chemists, tacticians. He paused. Often all at the same time. The general activated a recording from the Deep Space 7 incident. The students watched in silence as 12 human scientists systematically eliminated a boarding party of professional warriors. This is your final lesson about humans, Pexithron said as the recording ended. They do not fight the way other species fight. They do not think the way other species think. If you must engage humans in combat, remember that they will surprise you. They always surprise you. One student, braver than the others, asked the question they were all thinking. General, are you saying we should fear humans? Pexithron considered the question carefully. I'm saying we should respect them. There is a difference, but it is a difference that has kept many young officers alive. In the deep space between star systems, Captain Lucy Chen stood on the bridge of the human exploration vessel Horizon, watching her crew prepare for their next jump. They were heading into unexplored territory, following signals that suggested the presence of intelligent life. Chen was 45 years old and had spent most of her adult life exploring the galaxy's unknown regions. She had seen humanity grow from a single world to a scattered collection of colonies, and she had watched other species' attitudes toward humans change dramatically in recent years. Captain, called her communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the system ahead. Multiple alien vessels requesting our intentions. Put them through. The main screen activated, showing 3 different alien species in split-screen format. Each looked nervous despite their attempts to appear official. Human vessel, this is Commander Vexthal of the Catharian Defense Force. State your purpose in this system. This is Captain Chen of the exploration ship Horizon. We're conducting peaceful scientific surveys of uninhabited systems. You are entering Catharian space, the alien commander replied, but his tone was more cautious than threatening. Chen smiled politely. According to our star charts, this system has not been claimed by any government. Are you saying the Catharian government has established a presence here? There was a long pause. Chen could see the alien commanders conferring with their crews off-screen. Finally, Vexthal spoke again. The Catharian Defense Force would be honored to provide escort services during your scientific mission. For your protection, of course. Chen's smile widened slightly. A year ago, those same commanders would have ordered her ship to leave immediately or face the consequences. Now they were offering protection services. That's very kind of you, Commander. We accept your escort offer. As the Horizon moved into the system with an honor guard of alien warships, Chen reflected on how much had changed. Human exploration ships no longer traveled alone through dangerous space because other species were afraid to let them travel alone. The galaxy's predators had learned that attacking human explorers brought swift and overwhelming retaliation from human colonies. It was, she thought, a strange way to achieve peace through strength. On New Texas, Jake Morrison stood behind the counter of Morrison's kitchen, serving coffee to a mixed crowd of humans and aliens. His restaurant had become famous throughout the sector, not for its food, but for its history. This was where the legend had begun, where one ordinary human had killed 6 professional assassins with household items. The walls were decorated with gifts from alien visitors, a Centaurian energy sculpture, a Naloth crystal formation, a set of Catharian ceremonial weapons. Each represented a species that had chosen to honor rather than hunt humanity. Morrison poured coffee for Velquin, the alien assassin who now worked as a security consultant, teaching other species how to recognize and avoid human defensive preparations. Business is good? Morrison asked. Very good. Velquin replied in his translated voice. Every government in the galaxy wants to understand human psychology. They pay well for lessons on how to avoid the mistakes that killed so many of my former colleagues. At a corner table, Dr. Lisa Chang was interviewing a Vorthak military officer about his species' decision to abandon all operations against human targets. The xenobiologist had become the galaxy's leading expert on human-alien conflict resolution, studying how fear had transformed into respect. Morrison served coffee to the Vorthak officer, who accepted it with nervous gratitude. A year ago, that same alien might have tried to kill Morrison. Now he was seeking Morrison's advice on how to establish peaceful relations with human colonies. Funny how things change, Morrison said to no one in particular. At the bar, a human freighter captain was discussing safe passage arrangements with a group of alien merchants. They were negotiating not just for cargo space, but for the protection that came with traveling on human ships. Pirates throughout the galaxy had learned to avoid vessels with human crews. The evening news played on the restaurant's wall screen, showing footage of the latest human colony ship launching toward unexplored space.